Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon, and Cleveland, Ohio. We have over 700 books, over 25 employees, and we make about 40 new books every year. And we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to answer yet another reader question.
Yay, readers.
Should I work with a publisher or should I self-publish? Which is kind of the million-dollar question.
That is the question everybody is asking.
It is. In fact, they kind of ask that all the time.
People ask it after they've already had the experience of doing one or the other or both. They're still asking it.
Right. Well, they're asking it because they didn't have the results they wanted the first time achieved. And then they come back and they're like, maybe this time?
So should we go through the pros and cons of both?
Sure.
What do you want to start with?
I would say, the strong definitive answer is it depends what your goals are, which is kind of the answer to any question that is not a question that has a singular objective answer. But so the pros of working with a publisher are their relationships, the reach that those relationships offer. So for example, a publisher worth their salt has relationships with, licensing, like foreign rights, foreign translation, audio, etc. kind of companies that can get you places that you couldn't on your own. They have relationships with retailers. They have relationships with distributors and wholesalers that can get you sold into places that you couldn't on your own. Things like that. So, which is no small thing.
Mm-hmm. What else? Publishers also tend to be often, not always, better than the author at developing the book.
Yeah.
Like the title and the cover and all of its specs.
I call that professional staffing, which is essentially the idea that the publisher has enough emotional distance away from the book to be no, this should be the title. You shouldn't just use a title that could apply to literally any book. It should tell somebody what it is, who it's for, why they care, if it's also not for them.
I would say also the publisher is set up, presumably, to do many hours of professional labor related to the development, editorial, production, marketing, publicity, selling of your book, which you don't. If you want to do that, then that's awesome. Maybe you should become a publisher.
Right.
And if you don't want to do that, if you just want to write the book and then maybe, help sell it and promote it, you can choose to not do any of that work and not pay anyone to do any of that work.
And that's kind of the thing of it is, people tend to approach all of these problems as I know, I have a friend that could help me edit, or, I have people that will read it for me, and, I have a friend that's a painter that could do the cover. And you're well, none of these, this is essentially saying I'm going to get an amateur dentist and assume that the results will be comparable, it just, it's do you want a professional or do you not care? And you might not care. In which case, that's very good to know before you make your decision.
And also the publisher takes the financial risk.
Right, they fund, or as I should say, we fund the whole operation.
So those are some pros. What are the cons of working with a publisher?
The biggest con is control. And, con might be might not be the correct word here, but I guess if control is important to you, it's a con. That you will not be able to have, final say on things like your cover, your, the framing, development, and marketing of how your book is presented.
What other cons might there be? I guess your publisher might not be good at it.
Right.
You're taking a risk.
Yeah, that's true. You are presumably trusting them. And, not all trust is deserved in the world. That's just a sad fact. But it is what it is.
And you can, do some screening. I mean, big publishers make mistakes, too. But, when we say publisher, we mean a company that you are not paying and that, has distribution relationships and that has published books before. If those things are not true, then you're essentially self-publishing.
Yeah. And you really want someone that has published a book like yours before, meaning a book that would be on the same shelf in the bookstore. If they haven't done that, then they're not, they don't have credibility or relationships or any of the things that really gives you that leg up. And then the other thing about it is, is the schedule. This is the thing that seems to really rub people the most wrong, is that when you're a traditional publisher, you need to have all of your final content locked in 9 months or more prior to pub so that your publisher can sell your book to key accounts and wholesalers with the final cover, title, and then should the customer say, oh, can I take a look at the manuscript, you have that ready as well. And it doesn't maybe need to be polished, but it needs to be enough to show them without them being recoiling in horror, whereas when you self-publish, the presumed thing that happens is that you write the book and then the next day you send it to print and then the next day it is published.
I feel like we're getting into the pros of self-publishing. Let's segue into that.
Isn't that what we were talking about?
Oh, I thought we were still on
the cons of publishing. Oh, I see. I kind of saw them as the same thing, but yeah, I take your point.
All right, so self-publishing. First, how do you define self-publishing?
If you are paying the costs of your own book and or taking the risks.
Then you are self-publishing. So the pros of that, I guess, are all the cons. You're right.
Yeah.
Have we already covered this? You have total creative control.
Mm-hmm. For better or for worse.
You get to learn a lot. You do. You really get to learn to do a lot of things.
Ellie would frame this as a positive.
I feel like
most people would frame this as, I have to learn all these new things.
That's the fun of it, though. I feel like that's why a lot of people do it.
You see this?
But be careful, because if you really get into it, you might soon start publishing other people's books, and then you won't be self-publishing anymore.
Then you'll be unstoppable.
Then you'll be the man.
Oh.
Sorry, everyone.
It happens.
What are the other pros of self-publishing?
So then, you can make the decision of when to create new editions or when to take a book out of print or, essentially what to do with your estate. You can make decisions that the publisher probably doesn't agree with because they're looking at it as okay, the life of this book is still plateaued. Why would we do that at this time? Or, they're the one making decisions it's time for a new edition because we're starting to flag and we need to create some upward effect. Whereas when you're the author, you're often, I don't like this book anymore. I feel no attachment to this book anymore. And the publisher is well, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I guess if you don't like working with other people. But then you kind of do have to work with other people. You're kind of a project manager. Though that's not true. There are ways to self-publish where you can be kind of if you're publishing on a major online retail platform that shall not be named, you kind of can just sort of wing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's sort of the better or for worse is, and this is the thing I run into all the time is I'm just gonna publish it online and just see what happens, and but they want me to sort of greenlight that and tell them it's a good idea, which I can't really do in good conscience because I'm well, the statistics are there. If you do that, it will become lost on a giant catalog platform where no one will ever find it, and it is irrelevant whether or not it's good because no one will ever find it there.
I guess another pro of self-publishing but this is also a pro of traditional publishing, is you might actually win the lottery and make millions of dollars.
Yeah, I was going to say that is, and you're merely 12 times more likely to have that happen if you work with a publisher. So if you appreciate math, that might be the way to go. But
if you love being like really the underdog, now we're getting snarky.
If you like a further disadvantage to
I didn't want to be snarky.
Your lottery win.
Let's talk about the cons of self-publishing.
The cons of self-publishing are, well, essentially that you are really up against any like statistical average is set up against your success. That you're doing that mostly for, publishing like a family memoir that is really only for your own family, or if the entire goal is to make a book exactly like you want to with the, and I've talked to lots of authors that felt this way, where they're like, the only thing I care about is putting this exact photo on the cover and using this exact configuration of a title. And if people like it that way, so be it. If they don't, I don't care. And
then you just like earn it for that sense of satisfaction. Yeah, it's harder to find your readers when you self-publish. It just is like, it's a lot more work.
Right. And I think it's like...
not ever find them.
Yeah. And statistically you won't, but it's, for a lot of people, it's really comes down to like a childhood love of reading, very, very specific particular ideas that they can't get away from. And then, like attachment to that because of like the way some other book felt to them when they were a certain age.
So another con of self-publishing is it can be really lonely. Like anything where you're just like working by yourself.
That's true, right? At least you can talk problems through with your publisher.
What are other cons of self-publishing?
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Oh, you might actually be getting conned, literally.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah. There are a lot of self-publishing cons out there.
Like, there's little ones, like the people that are like, you can become a published author, that text me, like, every day.
Oh, they just texted me last night.
And then there's bigger ones, like that large retail platform that shall not be named that convinces you that you're self-publishing when in fact you are being published by them without any of the benefits of having a publisher.
Right. Who is in fact 10 times the size of the entire publishing industry put together.
And they tell you that you're independent when in fact you are really...
Dependent on them.
Kind of getting screwed over. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, good luck. But, so, the important thing here is, like, taking all of this information, not trying to ignore the parts that are inconvenient for, like, your emotional truth that you want to pursue, and making the decision that is best for you with the understanding that, it will take some time and some convincing and some searching to find the right solution,
And honestly, like, you can do both. Like, some of my favorite authors to work with started out as self-published authors, and they really, really, really appreciate all of the work that we do, and I think have a better experience with the publisher because they fully understand, they're not just like, why aren't they doing this? What's happening behind the scenes? I don't know, this seems sketchy. Another benefit of self-publishing is, like, there are communities of self-publishing authors that are, like, doing the same thing that you're doing that are, like, really pretty tight-knit, and, like, it's really cool. It's, like, a cool thing to be part of, and you can, like, rather than being lonely, you can feel like you've joined this movement, and you can learn from each other and kind of have this, like, back and forth that I think is really valuable and cool to be part of. And when you're a published author, that's harder to find.
You don't think they'll let you into their self-published community?
I mean, you probably can, but, like, do you really care about, like, what it takes to hire a cover designer or how to monetize on X platform or,
Right. It's a different set of concerns. Yeah, that's true. And I guess, in my experience, published authors are less network, or they're networky, but they're less of a community. They're a little more competitive with each other, which doesn't make any sense to me, but
yeah, how do we make more of a community for published authors? I tried to start an email list, but they didn't really use it.
Right. Well, and I think it's sort of an inherently lonely, isolated work.
It is. All right. So I guess loneliness is a con of both sides.
Right, but you can work... Well, you don't work with each other. You work with your publisher, it's a little...
Right.
But yeah, I think that's confusing, right? In summary, I feel like authors should be a little more community-oriented with each other.
Maybe we should start a Slack for Microcosm authors.
Maybe that would take more. Maybe.
Then we can find out just what a gang of misfits we really are.
But until then, I would say figure out the best publishing solution for you and put in the time to really weigh these pros and cons and think about them and not just sort of lean towards the emotional truth of what you want to do, but look at, what is in the best interest of your values and your work. Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.